A silent ring of stones stands frozen on an English plain. We are about to unravel 25 of the most astonishing explanations for its existence, theories that tear up the history books. You will discover everything from ancient healing sanctuaries to potential alien landing sites, a journey that questions the very capabilities of our distant ancestors. Was this a celestial computer predicting eclipses, or a monument built by the wizard Merlin himself? How do you explain a mystery that has endured for thousands of years? One of the most compelling theories suggests the stones were not a temple, but a vast celestial machine. This idea gained immense traction in the 1960s when an astronomer named Gerald Hawkins ran the alignments of Stonehenge through an early computer. He discovered something astonishing. The monument's structure, its arches and pillars, seemed to form dozens of precise sightlines to major solar and lunar events. Most famously, if you stand at the center of the circle and gaze through the great archway toward the outlying heel stone, you are looking directly at the spot on the horizon where the sun rises on the longest day of the year, the summer solstice. But Hawkins proposed it went far beyond that single alignment. He argued the entire configuration could predict eclipses by tracking the complex 18.6-year cycle of the moon. This would have been a monumental feat of engineering and observation, a calendar carved in stone that could foretell the dramatic moments when the sun and moon seemed to vanish from the sky. It implies the builders were not primitive farmers, but master astronomers who dedicated generations to mapping the heavens. How could a society without written language achieve such a thing? The stones themselves hold the answer, silently marking the movements of the cosmos with a precision that still captivates us today. Yet this astronomical observatory may have also served a far more human purpose, a desperate sanctuary for the sick and the suffering. A radically different theory proposes that Stonehenge was the Lourdes of the Neolithic world, a place of miraculous healing. The evidence comes not from the stars but from the bones buried around the stones. Archaeologists have uncovered a startling number of human remains in the area, many showing clear signs of severe disease and traumatic injury. There were skeletons with broken bones that had never set properly, evidence of advanced infections, and even the marks of primitive brain surgery. Why would so many people who are clearly unwell be brought to this specific location from all across Britain? The answer might lie in the stones themselves, specifically the smaller inner circle of bluestones. These stones were not local. They were dragged over 150 miles from the Preseli Hills in Wales, a journey of almost unimaginable difficulty. Why go to such extraordinary effort? The theory suggests these particular stones were believed to possess powerful, magical healing properties. Perhaps the builders thought the bluestones radiated a curative energy, or that the gods of the earth had imbued them with the power to cure sickness. Imagine the pilgrimage, a long and arduous journey made by people with no other hope, carrying their loved ones to this ring of stones in the belief that simply touching the bluestones could mend broken bodies and cure fatal illnesses. It transforms Stonehenge from a cold astronomical calculator into a place of profound human emotion, a monument built not just to track the heavens, but to heal the deepest wounds of those who walk the earth. But what if the stones were built to worship the light itself? Another powerful theory strips away the ideas of computers and hospitals, returning to a more primal human instinct. It suggests Stonehenge was first and foremost a temple for sun worship. The entire structure is a monument to the sun's journey across the sky, its architecture fundamentally oriented around the solar cycle. The central axis of the monument points directly to the spot where the sun rises on the summer solstice, the longest day of the year, but it does not stop there. If you turn 180 degrees, you face the exact opposite point on the horizon, where the sun sets on the shortest day of the year, the winter solstice. This was not a coincidence. The builders engineered this alignment with incredible precision, creating a permanent connection between their sacred circle and the two most pivotal moments of the solar year. For an agricultural society, these cycles were a matter of life and death. The summer solstice marked a time of abundance and growth, while the winter solstice represented the sun's rebirth, a promise that the long, cold nights would eventually end and the light would return. Can you picture the ceremonies? Thousands of people gathering in the pre-dawn chill of midsummer, their faces turned east, waiting in hushed silence for that first sliver of golden light to break over the heel stone and flood through the great trilithon arch. It would have been a moment of pure collective awe, a reaffirmation of their place in a cosmos governed by a powerful, life-giving force. This was not just about marking time, it was about communing with a deity, a spiritual practice that tied their community, their harvests, and their very survival to the reliable, majestic dance of the sun. The sun's rays may have illuminated ceremonies for the living, but the ground beneath the stones holds a much quieter story. Recent archaeological work has peeled back the turf to reveal that Stonehenge was for centuries a vast cemetery. The sheer number of cremated remains is staggering, with evidence suggesting the ashes of potentially hundreds of individuals were interred within and around the monument. This was not a common burial ground for an entire population. The analysis of these remains points to a more exclusive purpose. The individuals buried here were likely members of a privileged elite, a single ruling family, or a lineage of powerful chieftains. Think of it as a sacred dynastic tomb, a Neolithic equivalent of Westminster Abbey. The earliest burials actually predate the massive sarsen stones, beginning when the site was just a circular ditch and bank. This means the location was chosen as a royal cemetery first, with the Great Stone Circle erected later as a monumental capstone to honor this powerful bloodline. For over 500 years, generation after generation of this elite class were laid to rest here, their ashes uniting them with this sacred ground. Why would a society dedicate such immense labor to a single location? It was more than just a place of memory, it was a statement of power and permanence. By burying their leaders within this cosmic clockwork of stone, they were forging an unbreakable link between their ruling dynasty and the eternal cycles of the sun and moon. The stones were not just for the sky, they were a bridge connecting the authority of the dead with the celestial order governing the world of the living. Centuries before astronomers or archaeologists offered their explanations, an entirely different story was told around flickering hearths. Medieval chroniclers did not believe primitive humans could have built Stonehenge. They credited its construction to a figure of immense magical power, the wizard Merlin. This legend was immortalized by a 12th century cleric named Geoffrey of Monmouth in his History of the Kings of Britain. In his account, the stones were not raised by local tribes, but were a magical war memorial. The story begins with a treacherous massacre. The Saxon leader Hengist invited hundreds of British nobles to a peace conference, only to have his men draw hidden daggers and slaughter them all. The site of this atrocity became sacred ground, and the king, Aurelius Ambrosius, wished to erect a fitting monument there. His advisors told him of a miraculous stone circle in Ireland known as the Giant's Ring. They said the stones had been brought from Africa by giants and possessed healing properties. The king sent an army, including the young Merlin, to retrieve them. Yet when the soldiers arrived, they found the task impossible. The stones were too vast, too heavy for any mortal force to move. It was then that Merlin revealed his true power. With his profound knowledge of engineering and magic, he dismantled the entire circle and had the stones transported over the sea to Salisbury Plain. There he reassembled them exactly as they had stood, creating a lasting memorial for the slain princes. This legend transforms the monument from a pagan mystery into a chapter of national myth, tying it to the heroic age of King Arthur. It answers the how and the why with the sweep of a sorcerer's hand. a story where magic makes the impossible real and where stones hold the memory of royal blood and betrayal. Moving beyond myth and magic, a more structured purpose for the stones emerges from their very architecture. A compelling new theory suggests the monument was a colossal stone calendar, engineered to track the solar year with astonishing precision. At the heart of this idea are the 30 massive upright sarsen stones that formed the iconic outer circle. Each of these pillars could have represented a single day within a month. But the calendar did not stop there. The structure's full design appears to encode the entire solar cycle. The circle of 30 stones multiplied by 12 gives you 360 days. So how did they account for the extra 5¼ days that complete a true solar year? Researchers point to the 5 giant trilithons, the massive stone arches arranged in a horseshoe inside the circle. These 5 distinct structures could have symbolized those 5 additional days. And what about the final quarter of a day that leads to a leap year every 4 years? The entire layout is subtly arranged to account for this, creating a self-correcting system that kept the calendar in perfect sync with the seasons over long periods. For a society that depended on agriculture, this was not an abstract exercise. It was essential for survival. Knowing precisely when to plant crops, when to expect the first frost, or when to move livestock was knowledge that meant the difference between plenty and famine. This stone calendar would have allowed them to predict seasonal changes and organize their most important religious and social festivals with unwavering accuracy. Imagine the power this gave the keepers of Stonehenge. They held the rhythm of time itself, their authority written in the unyielding stone that marked the sun's eternal journey. The idea of a stone calendar is grounded in human ingenuity, but some theories suggest a source for that ingenuity that is not of this world. Among the most persistent and controversial explanations is that Stonehenge was built by or for extraterrestrial visitors. Proponents of this view argue that the sheer scale and precision of the monument are simply beyond the capabilities of Neolithic people. How could a society without the wheel or metal tools transport 80-ton stones over 20 miles, then hoist them into place with such accuracy? The mathematical sophistication of the celestial alignments, which track complex lunar cycles over decades, seems to them like a kind of knowledge that was gifted, not developed. In this scenario, the Great Circle of Sarsens was not a temple or a tomb, but a landing pad for alien spacecraft, its geometry providing a stable, recognizable beacon from the air. Or perhaps it functioned as a kind of interstellar navigation marker, a fixed point on the planet for advanced vehicles traversing the cosmos. The blue stones, with their supposed healing properties, could be interpreted not as magic but as technology, emitting energies or frequencies that served a purpose we can no longer comprehend. While mainstream archaeology dismisses this for a clear lack of evidence, the theory persists because it answers a deep, lingering question. It offers a solution to the awe we feel when confronted by such an ancient mystery, a way to resolve the cognitive dissonance between our image of primitive hunter-gatherers and the reality of this staggering engineering feat. It is a story where the stones are not a monument to human achievement, but a relic of a visit from the stars, a message in granite that we have yet to fully decode. The notion of alien architects is not the only theory that questions the timeline of human achievement. Another compelling idea suggests we are not looking at the work of simple Neolithic farmers, but at the legacy of a forgotten global civilization, a sophisticated culture that flourished in a lost age. This theory often points to legendary lands like Atlantis, a place described by the philosopher Plato as a powerful island nation with advanced technology and engineering that sank beneath the waves in a single day and night. Proponents argue that the mathematical precision and sheer scale of Stonehenge are artifacts of this higher knowledge, a surviving fragment from a world before a great cataclysm, perhaps a global flood or an ice age, reset human history. How else, they ask, could such complex astronomical alignments and multi-ton stone construction appear seemingly out of nowhere in prehistoric Britain? The standard archaeological timeline places the main construction around 5,000 years ago, but this theory posits a much deeper origin, a time when a master civilization mapped the world and raised monuments that would endure its own destruction. The bluestones, transported from distant Wales, could be seen not as a desperate pilgrimage for healing stones, but as a deliberate act by a culture with established long-distance sea routes and a unified architectural vision. The entire structure then becomes a time capsule, a message in stone from a people whose name and history have been utterly erased from memory, leaving only this silent, majestic ring as proof they ever existed. It is a haunting proposition that our deepest past might hold secrets of a golden age whose ruins we walk among every day, unable to recognize the true architects. These colossal stones might also mark the birthplace of a nation. Another powerful theory proposes that Stonehenge was not merely a spiritual center, but a grand political project, a deliberate act of state-building designed to unify the disparate and often warring tribes of Neolithic Britain. The sheer scale of the labor involved tells a story of unprecedented cooperation. Transporting the massive sarsen stones from the Marlborough Downs over 20 miles away, and the smaller bluestones from the Preseli Hills in Wales over 150 miles distant, would have required a coordinated effort on a scale never before seen on the island. This was not the work of a single village or clan. It demanded thousands of people from different regions and different backgrounds working together for generations. What could compel such diverse groups to collaborate? The answer may lie in a shared vision. By creating a central, sacred monument that drew on resources and labor from all corners of Britain, the ruling elite were forging a common identity. They were creating a symbol that belonged to everyone, a tangible focus for a new collective culture. Think of the social and political rituals that would have taken place here. Leaders from tribes who were once rivals would have gathered within the circle during the solstices, their shared participation in the ceremonies reinforcing a new political order. The very act of building something so permanent and so awe-inspiring would have given these disparate peoples a shared purpose and a shared achievement. It transformed the landscape from a collection of territories into a unified whole, with Stonehenge as its spiritual and political heart. This was more than a temple, it was a statement written in stone, declaring that these many tribes were now one people. Beyond the physical stones and their celestial alignments lies an invisible landscape of power. Some believe Stonehenge is not just a monument, but a vital node in a vast, energetic grid that spans the entire planet. This is the theory of ley lines, mysterious alignments that are said to connect ancient sacred sites, from burial mounds and stone circles to old churches and hilltop forts. These lines are not visible to the naked eye, but dowsers and mystics claim they can sense the powerful currents of earth energy that flow along them, much like underground streams. And according to this idea, Stonehenge sits at a crucial intersection of several of these major lines, a powerful nexus point where the energies are amplified and concentrated. Imagine these lines as the planet's own nervous system, with Stonehenge acting as a kind of spiritual brain or central processing unit. At this convergence, the energy is believed to be so potent that it can be harnessed for profound purposes. Practitioners of earth magic suggest it was used for powerful rituals, a place where the veil between our world and other realms was at its thinnest. The legendary healing properties of the bluestones could be reinterpreted not as magic in the stones themselves, but as a result of them being perfectly placed to channel this universal life force. People who visit the site today often report feeling a strange tingling sensation, a deep sense of peace, or an overwhelming emotional response which they attribute to this concentrated energy. Could this explain why our ancestors chose this exact spot out of all the places on Salisbury Plain? They may have been attuned to a world we can no longer perceive, building their great circle not just to track the sun, but to tap directly into the very heartbeat of the Earth. The silence of Stonehenge may be its greatest illusion. A remarkable theory proposes that this was not a quiet, solemn temple, but a place filled with otherworldly sound, a colossal musical instrument built from the Earth itself. This idea centers on the unique acoustic properties of the bluestones. Researchers have discovered that many of these smaller, inner stones, when struck with a small hammerstone, do not produce a dull thud. Instead, they ring out with a loud, clear, metallic chime, like a giant bell. This phenomenon is not common to all rock types. The specific dolerite that forms the bluestones has a crystalline structure that allows it to resonate, a property that would have been immediately apparent to the people who quarried and shaped them. Can you hear it in your mind? The deep, resonant gong of a bluestone being struck, the sound vibrating through the ground and echoing off the surrounding sarsen circle. This was not random noise, it was a controlled, intentional soundscape. The entire monument could have been played like a giant lithophone, a stone xylophone on a monumental scale. In the hands of a skilled practitioner, complex rhythms and sequences could have been produced, each tone carrying a specific ritual meaning. This sound would have been a powerful, immersive experience for anyone within the circle, a physical vibration felt in the bones as much as heard by the ears. It transforms our understanding of ceremonies here from purely visual spectacles of sunrise into multi-sensory events, where the very air hummed with a sacred, percussive music. The builders did not just choose these stones for their color or their supposed healing magic. They chose them for their voice, creating a sonic landscape as carefully engineered as its celestial alignments. This silent orchestra of stone may have also been listening to the deep rumblings of the Earth itself. Another theory suggests the monument was a sophisticated earthquake simulator, engineered to detect and perhaps even predict seismic shifts. The ground beneath Stonehenge is crisscrossed with geological faults, and the entire structure sits atop a major aquifer, a vast underground reservoir of water. This combination creates a dynamic environment of natural telluric currents, subtle electrical flows generated by the movement of water and rock deep below the surface. The unique arrangement of the stones, particularly the precise placement of the massive uprights and their lintels, could have acted as a giant sensor array. Imagine a minor tremor, a vibration too faint for a human to feel, traveling through the bedrock. As this energy pulse reached the stone circle, it might have caused the massive sarsens to vibrate at a specific frequency, or created a measurable change in the electromagnetic field within the horseshoe of trilithons. The priests or keepers of this site could have monitored these subtle changes, using tools as simple as a bowl of water to observe ripples or sensing a tingling in the air that signaled distant geological unrest. Furthermore, scientific studies have confirmed that Stonehenge sits on a geomagnetic hotspot, a place where the Earth's natural magnetic field is unusually strong and prone to fluctuation. The bluestones, with their unique metallic and crystalline composition, might have been chosen specifically for their ability to interact with this energy, acting as conduits or amplifiers. The entire structure then becomes less of a calendar and more of a colossal diagnostic tool, a stone-built instrument that tapped into the planet's own vital signs, translating the silent language of tectonic plates into a form its builders could potentially understand and use. The stones could be a map of a far vaster system, one that stretches far beyond our own moon and sun. A fascinating theory proposes that Stonehenge is not merely aligned with the heavens, but is a deliberate, scaled model of our entire solar system. In this view, the monument's various rings and stone arrangements are not random, but correspond directly to the planets and their orbital paths around the sun. Theorists who support this idea point to the complex layout of the site, which includes not just the main sarsen circle, but also the inner bluestone horseshoe, the outer circle of the Aubrey holes, and the distant station stones. They see a pattern that mirrors the cosmic order, The central altar stone, for instance, might represent our Sun. The planets, from Mercury out to Saturn, the farthest known to the ancients, could be symbolized by specific rings of stones or the empty spaces between them. The mathematics is compelling. When you measure the distances from the center of Stonehenge to these various rings and markers, some researchers claim they find ratios that closely mirror the relative distances of the planets from our Sun. How could a Neolithic culture possibly know the scale of the solar system, a fact that would not be confirmed by modern science for thousands of years? The answer proposed is one of patient, millennia-long observation. Perhaps ancient astronomers did not just watch the sun and moon, but tracked the slow, wandering paths of the planets against the backdrop of fixed stars. Over generations, they could have deduced the rhythm and scale of these celestial bodies, encoding their profound understanding not in books, but in the most permanent medium they had, stone. This transforms the monument from a simple calendar into a cosmic blueprint, a three-dimensional map of their universe, built on a scale they could walk within and touch, connecting their small world to the immense dance of the spheres. The grandeur of Stonehenge casts a long shadow, and in that darkness more sinister theories have taken root. Some archaeologists and historians propose that this was not a place of healing or celebration, but a site for human sacrifice and terrifying rituals. This grim possibility is fueled by discoveries in the surrounding landscape, none more chilling than that of the Amesbury archer. Found in a grave just a few miles from the stone circle, this man was buried with an incredible wealth of artifacts, including gold hair ornaments and copper knives, suggesting he was a person of immense importance. Yet his body tells a story of extreme suffering. He had lost his left knee in a severe injury, an amputation that would have left him crippled and in constant pain. Why was such a profoundly injured man given such a lavish burial so close to the sacred stones? One theory is that he was not a revered leader but a chosen victim. In many ancient cultures, physical imperfection could mark someone as a special offering to the gods. His sacrifice, perhaps performed within the circle, might have been seen as the ultimate act of appeasement. Was his life offered to ensure the sun would return after the winter solstice, or to beg the earth for a bountiful harvest? The sheer effort of building Stonehenge suggests a society capable of immense collective action, but also one that may have believed such cosmic order could only be maintained through the ultimate price, blood spilled upon the altar stone to keep the universe in balance. The very shape of Stonehenge may have been engineered to manipulate sound itself. This was not just a collection of chiming stones, but a carefully constructed resonant chamber. The circular layout of the massive sarcens, capped with their heavy lintels, would have acted like a partial sound reflector, trapping and bouncing noise within the enclosed space. The bluestone horseshoe inside would have further complicated the acoustics, creating a maze of echoes and dead spots. A person standing at the center of the circle, perhaps a shaman or priest leading a ceremony, would have found their voice amplified and distorted, their words seeming to come from all directions at once. For the dozens or even hundreds of participants gathered around the perimeter, the effect would have been profoundly disorienting. A chant or a rhythmic drumbeat would not have been a clear, single sound. It would have multiplied, overlapping with its own echoes, creating a constant, swirling wall of noise that physically vibrated in the chest. This sonic chaos was likely not a flaw, but the entire purpose. In many ancient traditions, repetitive sound and sensory overload are proven methods for inducing altered states of consciousness. The constant, inescapable percussion and the confusing reverberations would have made rational thought difficult, opening the mind to visions and a deep, trance-like state. The ceremonies here might have been designed to break down the individual's sense of self, merging them into a collective spiritual experience. The stones did not just mark the sun's journey, they orchestrated a journey into the human psyche, using the physics of sound to open a doorway to what its builders believed was the realm of the gods. The disorienting soundscape within the stones might have been designed to open more than just the mind. Some of the most speculative theories suggest this was the entire purpose, that Stonehenge functions not as a calendar or a temple, but as a literal stargate, a stable portal to other dimensions or distant times. Modern druids and mystics who gather at the circle for solstice ceremonies often report experiences that defy conventional explanation. They speak of sudden, profound shifts in the atmosphere where the light seems to warp and the air grows thick with a tangible energy. Some claim to have seen shimmering vortices open between the great trilithons, fleeting windows into alien landscapes or glimpses of figures from a different era. These are not just stories, they are deeply felt personal encounters that point to the stones as a living, active gateway. The idea is that the specific arrangement of the stones, aligned with celestial forces and built upon a powerful nexus of earth energies, creates a stable rip in the fabric of reality itself. This portal would not be for physical travel, but for spiritual journeying, a conduit for consciousness to traverse the cosmos or communicate with otherworldly beings. The bluestones, with their unique sonic and energetic properties, could act as tuning forks, vibrating at a frequency that resonates with higher planes of existence. Imagine a shaman standing at the center of the circle, the swirling acoustics pushing their mind into a deep trance, their spirit then stepping through the archways not of stone but of time and space. This transforms Stonehenge from a monument to the past into a perpetual engine of possibility, a machine whose true function is to connect our world with the infinite, unknown realms that lie just beyond the veil of ordinary perception. Long before the idea of aliens, our ancestors had their own explanation for the impossible weight of these stones. The sheer scale of the sarcens, each one a small mountain of rock, seemed to demand a builder of equally massive proportions. This is how legends of giants and one-eyed cyclopes were born, stories told to explain what human hands clearly could not achieve. Across the ancient world, wherever people encountered megalithic ruins left by their predecessors, they often attributed the work to a lost race of giants. It was a simple, powerful solution to a deeply unsettling mystery. How could a circle of 50-ton stones stand on a plain where no such rock existed? The logic was inescapable. Only giants could have carried them. The legend of the Cyclops in particular finds a strange echo here. These one-eyed beings from Greek myth were said to be master smiths and builders, responsible for the colossal walls of cities like Mycenae. Their single eye might symbolize a singular, focused vision, the kind of concentration needed for such a monumental engineering task, but it also speaks to a deeper human instinct. When confronted by the ruins of a past they could no longer comprehend, people filled the void with myth. They looked at the towering trilithons and saw not the patient work of generations, but the playground of primordial titans. These stories were not mere fairy tales. They were the first attempts at archaeology, a way for later cultures to make sense of a legacy that dwarfed their own understanding, ensuring that the true builders may have been forgotten, but the awe they inspired would never fade. The bones buried within the stones may hold more than just the memory of the dead. One of the most futuristic theories suggests that Stonehenge was not merely a cemetery, but a sophisticated genetic repository, a biological bank designed to preserve the DNA of a specific, perhaps royal, bloodline. This idea transforms the monument from a tomb into a kind of Neolithic cryogenic vault. The cremated remains of hundreds of individuals, carefully interred over centuries, could represent a deliberate effort to conserve the very essence of a lineage. Why go to such lengths? In a world without written history, genetic material was the ultimate record, a living library of ancestry and identity. By placing these remains within a structure aligned with the eternal cycles of the cosmos, the builders may have believed they were securing the immortality of their people, freezing their biological identity in time just as the stones themselves seemed frozen in the landscape. The bluestones, with their purported healing properties, could be reinterpreted in this light. Perhaps they were not for curing the living, but for preserving the dead, their unique mineral composition acting as a stabilizing agent to protect the genetic code from decay over millennia. This was not about resurrection, but about legacy. It was an attempt to create a permanent, physical connection between the past and the future, ensuring that even if their civilization fell, the biological signature of their most important family would endure, locked safely within this ring of stone. Can we even comprehend the foresight this would require, to think in terms of thousands of years, to build a monument not for your own generation, but for a future you would never see, all to safeguard the blueprint of your people against the relentless erosion of time? But what if the stones were built not to celebrate the cosmos, but to fear it? A chilling theory suggests this monument is a stark warning, a message carved in granite to alert future generations of a recurring cataclysm. The alignments we see today, celebrating the life-giving sun, could have a far darker purpose. Some researchers propose the structure tracks not just the steady rhythms of the sun and moon, but the unpredictable and terrifying arrival of cosmic threats. The most compelling candidate is a comet. The architecture of Stonehenge contains several unusual alignments that do not correspond to the rising or setting of any known star or planet. Instead, they point to specific, empty patches of the night sky. What if these were not mistakes, but deliberate markers for the predicted return path of a devastating comet, one that had struck the Earth in the distant past with enough force to wipe out entire civilizations? The builders, having witnessed or inherited the memory of such an event, would have been driven by a desperate need to ensure their descendants were not caught unaware. The entire monument then becomes a prehistoric early warning system, its silent stones holding the key to survival. Another proposed threat is a pole shift, a catastrophic realignment of the Earth's rotational axis. Such an event would cause global flooding, violent climate change, and the collapse of all familiar seasons. The complex lunar alignments at Stonehenge, which track the moon's subtle wobble over an 18.6-year cycle, could have been a way to monitor the stability of the Earth's rotation itself. A slight deviation from the predicted pattern might have signaled the beginning of such a shift. Imagine the keepers of this site watching the heavens not with wonder, but with a deep, gnawing dread, measuring the moon's path year after year, generation after generation, waiting for the sign that the world was about to turn upside down. This theory transforms Stonehenge from a symbol of cosmic order into a monument to cosmic terror, a desperate plea from the past, urging us to look up and remember that the sky can bring more than just light. This silent orchestra of stone may have been more than a musical instrument. It could have been a prehistoric power plant. A theory made famous by television documentaries proposes that Stonehenge was a sophisticated machine designed to generate and harness the Earth's own energy. At the core of this idea are the mysterious bluestones. Their unique geological composition holds the key. These stones are rich in quartz crystals, a mineral with a fascinating property known as piezoelectricity. When quartz crystals are placed under mechanical stress, such as the constant, subtle pressure from the massive sarsen lintels above them, or even the vibrations from the Earth's own movements, they generate a small electrical charge. It is the same principle used in modern cigarette lighters or the quartz crystal in your wristwatch. Now, imagine this effect on a monumental scale. Thousands of tons of stone pressing down, the ground itself vibrating with telluric currents, all acting upon a circle of quartz-rich pillars. The entire structure could have functioned as a giant piezoelectric generator, converting the immense physical pressures of its own construction and the seismic energy of the landscape into a measurable electrical field. What would an ancient society do with such power? The energy might not have been used for lighting, but for something far more profound. This generated electricity could have been focused and amplified by the specific arrangement of the stones, perhaps directed toward the central altar stone, creating a zone of intense energy. Was this power used for healing, supercharging the purported curative properties of the site to a level that could mend tissue and bone? Or was it a form of primitive technology, a power source for devices or processes we can no longer comprehend? The theory suggests the builders were not just mystics, but engineers who understood how to tap into the planet's latent forces, transforming a simple circle of rocks into a resonant chamber that hummed with the raw, untapped power of the Earth itself. The geometry of Stonehenge may chart a world that vanished beneath the waves. This theory suggests the monument is not a calendar or a temple, but a precise map of a lost continent like Atlantis, a scaled-down replica built by survivors to preserve the memory of their drowned homeland. The arrangement of the stones, with its concentric circles and specific gaps, is said to mirror the geographical features of a legendary landmass. When you overlay the layout of Stonehenge onto proposed maps of Atlantis, with its rings of water and land described by Plato, the similarities are striking. The outer Sarsen circle could represent the outermost coastline of the great island kingdom. The inner bluestone horseshoe might chart the central mountain range surrounding the ancient capital city. Even the empty spaces, the so-called missing stones, could correspond to river valleys or harbors that were crucial to the lost civilization. How would a people from prehistoric Britain know the shape of a continent that sank thousands of years before and thousands of miles away? The answer proposed is as simple as it is profound. They were the descendants of those who escaped the cataclysm. These refugees, carrying the advanced knowledge of their culture, would have sought to recreate their homeland in their new land, building a permanent, sacred map to honor what was lost. The bluestones, hauled from distant Wales, could symbolize the exotic mountains of their origin, a piece of the old world embedded in the new. This transforms Stonehenge from a local monument into a global relic, a piece of a forgotten world puzzle. It stands as a memorial to an entire civilization, its true meaning locked in a geometry we are only now beginning to decipher. The very stones of Stonehenge might have been designed to tune not just sound but thought itself. A deeply psychological theory proposes that this was not a temple for the body, but a machine for the mind, engineered to amplify telepathic abilities and fuse individual consciousness into a single, unified group mind. This idea draws from the concept of collective consciousness, the notion that our individual thoughts are part of a larger, shared mental field, a sea of awareness that connects all people. The builders of Stonehenge, this theory suggests, had an intuitive understanding of this field. They designed the monument's precise geometry to act as a lens, focusing this mental energy at a central point. The concentric circles of stones would have created a contained, resonant chamber for consciousness, isolating participants from the distractions of the outside world and turning their collective attention inward. Imagine dozens of people gathered within the circle, their minds not just focused on the same ritual, but literally beginning to synchronize. The constant, low-frequency hum of the chiming bluestones and the disorienting acoustic echoes would have helped to break down the normal boundaries of the self, lulling the brain into a more receptive, suggestible state. In this shared trance, a thought or an image from a priest or shaman at the center could have been broadcast not through sound, but through an amplified psychic connection, appearing in the minds of everyone present simultaneously. This was not about sending words, but pure understanding, a wave of shared emotion and vision that created a temporary collective intelligence. The purpose would have been spiritual enlightenment, a way to experience a direct connection to the divine or to the ancestral memory of the tribe, forging a unity so profound that for a moment the many truly became one. The memory of water runs deep in human history, etched into flood myths from every corner of the globe. A powerful theory suggests Stonehenge itself is a monument to this shared trauma, a colossal memorial built by the survivors of a great deluge. Imagine a cataclysm so vast it reshaped the world, a wall of water that erased coastlines and drowned entire civilizations. Those who lived through it would have been driven by one overwhelming imperative: to ensure their descendants would never be so unprepared again. This was not just about remembering the past, it was about securing the future. The survivors, possessing advanced knowledge of astronomy and engineering from their lost world, sought to create a tool that could predict the rhythms of nature with absolute precision. They built Stonehenge as both a warning and a calendar, a stone-built ark of knowledge designed to track time itself. Some researchers point to specific, lesser-known alignments within the monument that do not correspond to solar or lunar events. Instead, they argue these sightlines track the movements of stars and constellations associated with seasonal rains and river flooding in the ancient world. The complex lunar cycle encoded in the stones which governs the tides could have been used to model and predict unusually high water levels, the kind that lead to catastrophic inundations. The circle of stones then becomes a promise, a covenant in granite. It stands as a permanent memorial to those lost, while its celestial machinery acts as a sentinel, forever watching the sky for signs of the returning waters. It is the ultimate act of defiance against chaos, a declaration that humanity would now read the signs and never again be taken by surprise by the fury of the earth. This entire sacred machine might have been built for a single, profound conversation. The stones could have functioned as a colossal interface, a spiritual switchboard designed to open a direct line of communication with the gods. In a world where deities controlled the sun, the rain, and the harvest, the ability to speak with them was the highest form of power. The priests or shamans who operated this interface followed a precise protocol written in stone and sky. They did not merely watch the solstice sunrise, they used it. As the first ray of light pierced the great trilithon and struck the central altar stone, it was not just a spectacle, it was a signal. That beam of light was the switch being thrown the moment the channel was believed to open. The entire architecture was engineered for this connection. The towering Sarsen circle created a sacred, insulated space, a container for divine energy, while the inner bluestone horseshoe focused that energy toward the center where a priest would stand. But the interface was not just visual. The resonant chime of the bluestones struck in a specific sequence would have been the audio component of the call, a sacred ringtone meant to get the attention of distant deities. The rhythmic drumming and chanting of the participants, amplified and distorted by the stone acoustics, created a sonic blanket that drowned out the mundane world and elevated the collective consciousness of the group. This was not a passive prayer sent out into the void. It was an active, multi-sensory ritual designed to force a connection. The priest, standing at the focal point of this converging energy, light and sound, would enter a deep trance. In this altered state, they might have received visions, heard voices, or felt a presence they interpreted as a divine response. They were not just asking for a good harvest, they were negotiating for it, using the most powerful technology their world had ever known to bridge the impossible gap between earth and heaven, human and God. The final theory pushes the boundaries of belief into the realm of science fiction. It suggests the Salisbury Plain is not a sacred site, but a cosmic graveyard, the final resting place of a starship that fell from the heavens. In this scenario, the Great Stone Circle was not built as a temple or a calendar, but as a memorial or a salvage operation. The survivors of the crash, stranded on a primitive world, might have used advanced technology from their wrecked vessel to manipulate the massive stones, creating a permanent marker of their arrival or a beacon to signal for rescue. Alternatively, local humans who witnessed the cataclysmic event could have viewed the alien visitors as gods, constructing the monument to venerate them and enshrine the powerful artifacts left behind. This idea draws directly from the tenets of ancient astronaut theory, which interprets humanity's greatest architectural leaps as evidence of extraterrestrial intervention. The precision of the stone alignments is seen not as human ingenuity, but as applied alien mathematics. The bluestones, with their strange sonic and supposed energetic properties, are reimagined as pieces of the ship's engine or communication array, repurposed by awestruck humans who did not understand the technology they were building with. This narrative has been powerfully amplified by popular media, from speculative documentaries to blockbuster films, where ancient monuments are often revealed as alien artifacts. It is a story that answers the how with otherworldly power, transforming our ancestors from brilliant engineers into devoted acolytes of star travelers. It solves the mystery of Stonehenge by placing its origins not on Earth, but in the cold, vast silence of space, a silent ring of stones standing guard over a secret from the stars. From alien landing pads to ancient power plants, the sheer breadth of ideas surrounding these stones is staggering. We have journeyed through theories that paint this site as a celestial observatory, a healing sanctuary, a political symbol, and even a gateway to other dimensions. Each explanation, whether grounded in archaeology or soaring into speculation, reflects a piece of our own fascination. This monument resists a single, simple answer. Its true purpose remains locked in silence, a 5,000-year-old enigma that continues to defy our best efforts at a final solution. And perhaps that is the real magic of Stonehenge. It is not just a collection of rocks on a plain, but a mirror. It reflects back our own relentless curiosity, our need to find meaning in the ancient and the awe-inspiring. It stands as a permanent challenge, a puzzle that invites every generation to look upon its weathered stones and ask, what is your story? So we turn the question to you. After exploring these 25 mind-bending possibilities, which theory resonates most deeply with you? Share your favorite idea in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this journey into the unknown, be sure to subscribe for more explorations into the world's greatest historical puzzles.